Okay, so hello everybody, thank you for waiting. Sorry we're running a little bit behind time here. I'm just going to set my own timer up to make sure that we try and stick on time for the rest of the presentation. Okay, well, we'll see how we can do. Good, so welcome, thank you for coming. I'm going to be talking to you today about 4 critical tools for engaging in respectful conversations on diversity. Quick introduction to myself, my name is Dr. Haggis. I am a senior lecturer and researcher from the Academy of Digital Entertainment, which is part of NHTV University. I've come over from the Netherlands, and it's a lovely place to be working, I have to say. For about 15 years, I've also been working in games. I've been working in entertainment media, in animation. I do fine art and all kinds of other things on the side. So basically, I'm a digital media entertainment professional who also teaches at the same time, and I am still making games. I'll talk a little bit more about one of those at the end of this today, which kind of ties in with some of the topics of the talk. I've been involved with or following the equal rights and diversity awareness movement for around 20 years now. It's something that is very close to my heart. And so I've got quite a few ideas that I've been developing over this time. And hopefully they're going to help some people to think about diversity in their own products a little bit more carefully. I do also talk quite fast. I am aware of that. I do apologise, but we've got a lot to get through. So we do have the one advantage that basically all the main points I'm going to be talking about today, they do appear on the screen behind me, so that makes life a lot easier for you all to follow, hopefully. So today we're going to be talking about 4 critical tools for the diversity awareness movement. As I hope you'll understand at the end, diversity isn't just solely about women and gay people, especially in games content, culture, and development in studios as well. However, it is definitely about them too. That's a very, very important part of what we're talking about here. But awareness of these issues does benefit everybody, from the most mainstream nerd guy you can possibly think to the most transgender, out there far right activist or far left activist or whatever area you're going from. These issues are going to benefit everybody who gets involved here. So it's really for the good of all of us. So the 4 tools we're going to be talking about today are privilege, microaggressions, victim blaming, and tone policing. Victim blaming has a little bit heavy stuff in it. I will tell you when that point comes along, and there's a way of avoiding it. Tone policing is probably the hardest one, the most complicated one to really balance right. It is quite a complicated issue, but we'll talk about that when we get there. These aren't the only tools worth knowing, of course. There's many, many aspects of diversity that are really worth getting your head around. But once you understand these, you're off to a great start. So let's start off with privilege. So, really, about me, I'm white. You may have noticed that. It's pretty clear. I'm also I appear male. I was born this way, and I'm reasonably comfortable with being described as male. This puts me down as cis male. Cis male is just means that I'm not trans male or trans star, as we talk about, which means basically my status as a man has never been something I've had to fight for. I've never required any effort to attain that, so I've never had to argue to be allowed into a men's changing room when I've been going swimming. I've never had a discussion about applying for a passport and what sex should be written in there. These are little things that without those areas you just don't become aware of. Simple everyday things I've never had to face because I'm not trans male. So that's a little privilege I got right there. Labels like this can be necessary sometimes. I mean, if we think about sort of you talking about U.S. police force, we're talking about how do they interact with Americans. Then we talk about the debate how do they interact with African Americans. Sometimes labels are necessary to start a conversation, keep it going well. It's not always nice to use labels. They're not always a positive thing, but sometimes they are necessary. I speak English as my first language. That's a big advantage. I'm a British guy who teaches in the Netherlands, giving this talk in Austria, and I've used the same language in every one of those places. That's a big advantage for me, especially in the games industry, where this is very, very dominated by the English language. I'm tall for a British guy. Being tall does tend to make people think of you as a leader. If you look at American elections, the person who wins around 90-95% of the time is usually the tallest candidate. Now, it might also be coincidentally that they do actually have the best policies as well, but you can't help but wonder if maybe there is a correlation with leadership that is seen from tall people. This is an advantage I have naturally. I have all my senses, I have all my limbs, and generally I'm in quite good physical and mental health, relatively speaking, so I'm off to quite a good start. All those things are reasons why, in some circumstances, my life is going to be easier than the lives of people without those privileges. My life has been made easier by this stuff. Can any of you think of anything else that might give me an advantage? Any suggestions? People always get shy at this point, going, I don't want to say he's privileged. I don't want to say he's privileged. Yeah, you're looking thoughtful. Yeah. I'm an academic. Yeah, definitely. Education. Definitely. Education is a top one here. I've had the advantage of a middle class background and a stable socioeconomic sort of childhood, which meant that I got a good education. I'm an academic now, as well as having those practical skills. These are things that really, really do help. I'm employed. And in society, that means my voice gets listened to a lot more. Unemployed people don't have their voices listened to. So there are many things that are going on here. I've never lived a life without these things. I've been employed for pretty much since I was delivering papers when I was about 13. I've had a generally quite nice life in many respects. It would be really easy for me to misunderstand what it is to live without these privileges. It would be so simple for me to lack empathy, and lack respect for people who don't have these things on their side. There's nothing wrong with me having these privileges. There's nothing wrong with me being white. There's nothing wrong with me being cis male. None of these things are bad. But it also means I could lack empathy for other people, and that's where we get into issues. I could think they're lazy and stupid because something that seems so easy, so natural for me, does not come easily to them. Like presenting, I'm quite happy standing in front of a group of people and presenting. That's something from my background that's quite simple. Now, it isn't for most people. So I can't really punish people too much if this is difficult for them. Punishing people because they don't have my privileges, that would be wrong. The privileges themselves are not wrong. Lacking understanding and empathy for others is. So privilege itself is not bad. It's a lack of empathy that is. Privileges are really unspoken advantages that everyone has in their life in some way. We all have these things going. Privilege is about having the power to control your life and change those things that upset you. It's about how power is automatically given based on cultural history and circumstances to one group over another group. And this is something that we see going on through the history of these ideas. And nearly everybody has something that goes against them too. That's also a thing. For some people, it's being very nerdy or geeky. That's something that makes some people feel that that's a problem they have. It can also work in their benefit. One thing I've got on against me, you could say, is that I'm also bisexual. That one wasn't on that list earlier, was it? Because of my sexuality, I've had a group of guys beating on my door, threatening to smash it down and attack me. That's happened. Because of my sexuality, I've had threatening phone calls. That wasn't very nice. Because of my sexuality, I've been unwelcome in gay bars, and I've been unwelcome in straight bars. That's fantastic. Yeah, being bi, it's great fun sometimes. Or bars, as they're called to straight people who don't actually have to think of a name for straight bars, because they're all called bars to straight people. That's an interesting thing. So that's a kind of little heterosexual privilege right there. You don't have to think of names for straight stuff. I've had a drunken guy who wouldn't take no for an answer, trying to grope me and stick his tongue down my throat. Because, you know, being bisexual means you've automatically given consent to all sexual advances, right? Right? No, I don't think so. Just because I can be attracted to men and I can be attracted to women, it doesn't mean I automatically am. I'm not giving my consent for this stuff. But some people seem to think it does. So a heterosexual cis male will probably never face those things for reasons of their sexuality. Might happen for other reasons, of course. That's possible. It's not just actions, it's words too. So these are things I've heard say to me, oh, so you're 50% gay and 50% straight, are you? It doesn't quite work like that, no. A male identifying bisexual is often described as confused or in denial. Oh, you're really gay, aren't you? Or a disease carrier to the rest of us. That's a particularly nice one, yes. We are transferring things back and forth between gay people and straight people. It's so much fun. No. A female identifying bisexual is often doing it to impress the guys, apparently, and many other things. Because a woman's sexuality is always about impressing guys, right? Yeah. It's not about our own pleasure, or it's always for an audience, and that audience is basically male. So we've got these things which happen. So when I'm with a guy, people think I'm gay, and if I'm with a woman, then people are going to think I'm straight. So my bisexuality is invisible, so it's also dismissed. This is something that we don't really see much. It's great videos by a YouTuber called Gay Rights W. RITES, talk about bisexual erasure if you want to learn more about that. So we've got this kind of bisexual invisibility. It's ignored by culture. But the ridiculous thing is that denial of my sexual identity can also be a privilege. It's a weird thing that they say you don't exist. But if I'm with a woman, then I have passing privilege. Basically, people will think I'm heterosexual, and so this is what I like to call stealth mode. Um, so basically, I can pass for a heterosexual person and have all the benefits of social acceptability that go for that in society. If I'm dating a woman, then this is quite a nice thing. Now, in most of Europe, this isn't too much of a problem, but in certain parts of the world, this could be a bigger issue for us. Russia, in particular, at the moment, does have issues with gay people and people with alternative lifestyles and sexualities. So being bisexual means I could date somebody who fits my sexual preferences and still get on in Russian society. So even though it's invisible, that can also be an advantage. These things aren't simple. So there's a difference between systematic cultural privilege, such as being born white in the Western world, and possessing privileged knowledge, such as being transsexual. These are not the same kind of privilege. Power and insight are different things. They are privileges, but they are different things. There's more than one type. Although both have privilege, power has a far larger influence on society and ability to change the world around them. People with insight should be given a platform to share their knowledge, and hopefully power might become part of their lives as well. But frequently positions of power think they'll lose their strength if their own view is questioned, and often those extra insights are questioning views which are more mainstream. So the person with the power, this kind of systematic structural privilege, has the option to ignore and repress different views. That's usually where a lot of problems start. The person with privileged insight often does not. And then when they try to talk about it more loudly, people get angry about that. And that's where we're going to talk about later. So one characteristic of a person can be both a privilege and a point of disempowerment, depending on the context. Being bisexual in the Netherlands is a bit different from being bisexual in Russia. Being a Muslim in France is very different from being a Muslim in Iran. We have very different situations here, and sometimes one thing is an advantage in one place and not somewhere else. Or being a geek at school is very different from being a geek in a gaming community, where one is a system of rejection, a place of rejection, another one might be a place which embraces you. We can see there are differences going on here. Privilege is complicated and could be a subject of huge essays, and it is. There's a really great one called You Don't Have to Apologize for Being White on medium.com. Please have a look up if you're really interested in these kind of things. These slides will be available to look at later on the web and stuff as well. Being open to the idea that other people have different lives and views is a starting point for a sensible conversation on diversity. If you want to have games content that deals with these topics, please do talk to people that are going to be involved. Please do your research, find out what they think of your ideas. Privilege makes it easy to ignore these problems that aren't your own. When we gain so much insight from making effort to understand others, it's this never-ending task, but it's also infinitely rewarding. The more you know, the better a person you become. It's fantastic. I've talked a lot on this subject so far in this talk because it's often a misunderstood term, and I hope this has made people think a little bit more. But it is enormously important to assimilate into how you think and act towards others. If you understand this, it's a great starting point. So as a final note on this before I move on to the next topic, when I was at university, my girlfriend at the time had no work and no money. And she said to me, I said to her that she should ask for government benefits or use one of the other support systems available for students from a difficult background. Her reply stuck with me, and it's been 20 years nearly since she said this to me. The difference between the middle class and the working class is that the middle class see all the doors as being open for them. The working class don't even see the doors. And just that little sentence stuck with me for such a long time. So I think it encapsulates so much about privilege. This idea that some people automatically see all these options. They don't even have to take them. They just know they're there. The idea of me walking up to a person who's wearing a suit, sitting behind a desk and going, hi, I hear you're a right person to ask about for giving some help. To me, that doesn't terrify me. That feels natural. That feels like a normal activity I might do. But to other people without my upbringing, without my fortune, even that idea seems like you're admitting weakness. Why can't you do it yourself? You should be able to stand on your own 2 feet. Why would you possibly need to ask for help from some guy in an office who you've never met, who's nothing like you? So, microaggressions. So imagine I pointed at your nose and said, wow, you've got a big nose. And perhaps you really do think you've got a big nose. Perhaps you're a little bit shy about this. And so you laugh along because, yes, yeah, it is a big nose, yeah. And then later that day, someone else says to you, wow, you've got a big nose. And, well, yeah, you laugh along because, yes, it is a big nose, yes. And then later that day, someone else says to you, wow, you've got a big nose. And you don't really laugh because, yeah, it's a big nose. You're aware of that by this point now. Yeah, it's definitely a big nose. And then later that evening, someone else says to you, wow, you've got a big nose. And you tell them to fuck right off. And they say to you, whoa, calm down, it's only a joke. Fucking hell, some people can't even take a joke. They're so sensitive, fucking crazy bitches. Sorry, I've been typing nose, haven't I? I meant to type breasts. Because that's the kind of thing that happens. So, it's only a joke. If you make a small comment and someone blows up about it, wonder to yourself, was that the first time they've heard that? Was that even the first time they've heard that hour? Have they had enough of hearing that same thing again and again and again in their lives? It might be only a joke to you, but it clearly wasn't only a joke to them. So microaggressions are tiny things that individually are nothing much, but all together every day for years at a time, they create an atmosphere that slowly kills the person inside, or keeps them down, or makes them lash out and get angry, and we'll talk about that later. It's a toxic atmosphere that doesn't kill them immediately, but gradually saps their strength. And we do this kind of stuff in society all the time. So if you search for the top 10 sexiest characters in video games, you're going to get this. You've got top 10 sexiest female game characters, top hottest female video game characters, sexiest female video game characters, 10 sexiest female video game characters, top 10 sexiest video game characters. I checked that one. You can see the link's a different color. It's entirely women. And video game characters. Oh, and 25 hottest game girls of all time, followed by 25 hottest female video game characters. So, what do we notice as a pattern developing here? Well, for a start, it's all female and girls. Now, it's better than in 2013. I did this a couple of years ago, where it was all girls. So it's the sexiest girls in video games, the top 10 sexiest video game girls, the sexiest video game girls, 10 sexiest female. Oh, okay, we've got female. 10 sexy games for perverts. 10 outrageous sexy moments, and 50 sexiest game girls of all time. So we've kind of progressed a little bit from girls up. One other thing we may notice here is that men and male identifying people aren't sexy enough for popular lists, apparently. So try searching. I can guess you know what's going to happen if you search for sexy women's underwear. You're going to get lots of women in lingerie, and it's what is classically established as sexy clothing for women. Search for sexy men's underwear, and you get this. This is one of the top search results for sexy men's underwear. And you've all giggled. Good. Because men's sexuality is comedic, apparently. And isn't that a funny thing? Isn't that funny that we laugh at men's sexuality? So it seems ridiculous that a man would try to use a language of sexuality. The only language of sexuality we usually really have is either from gay culture, or there isn't one for straight culture. Where is the heterosexual sexy man kind of language of how a normal person can be sexy? What can a man do to feel sexy? Because it's certainly not the same. But female sexuality is an object of desire to be owned and observed. We've kind of got this, get the shiny bike and you'll get the shiny woman in the shiny heels. And that's weird, because it seems like you're trying to buy the woman alongside the bike, and that's not quite right. So these problems are both part of the same problem, and the devaluing of men as sexual beings is also a type of aggression too. But the physical consequences often end up in the lives of women. So we're basically laughing at men, taking the power of sexuality away from men, but that makes men angry, feel disempowered, and women are being given no power and objectified, which men with no power then seek to own them, and then we get into all kinds of horrible sexual violence. And that's really not good. I have put that asterisk Next to the word often there, because of course sexual violence does happen to men too, and domestic abuse does happen to men too. It's not on the same level, and it's not as culturally assimilated as being something that is expected to happen, but this is obviously a serious issue that does need to be talked about too. But often, the consequences of our culture is that women are the victims of sexual abuse. But both sides have got problems here. But it is a problem for both of us. This thing does work both ways. So if we go back to here, we're back at this point. Female and girls, not women. What's the privilege here? What are the words meaning? What are they categorizing people as? What are the messages that we say here? Female makes it sound like a zoological study. The female adult baboon has turned her hind features towards the camera here. It's kind of weird. What is this sort of scientific categorization of the species? What's wrong with saying a woman? And girls sounds like it's kind of dismissal of being an adult woman, reinforcing the idea of youth as being the only valid form of sexuality. You're going to be sexy if you're a girl. Women aren't allowed to do that. Or is it that sexy women are like children, that you really shouldn't? I mean, they're a little bit immature. They don't know what they're doing. They need a man to look after them. These are words that we hear all the time, and it's kind of weird. Now, we've said that it's only a joke, isn't okay. We agree pretty much this isn't okay to keep on doing these tiny little things that are grinding us down. So is It's Only a Game any better? If a game contains microaggressions that target people without power or privilege, such as sex industry workers, or racial or ethnic minorities, sometimes majorities, or people with mental health problems, they're always psychopaths with torn straitjackets and chainsaws who want to kill you. Not just normal people. Most people in the world have got a mental health problem at some point in their life. Is it a defense to say it's only a game when society beats these people down on a daily basis already? Is that okay? Is it only a game if this is just contributing to this mess we're in? Is it a defense that we can add these things to already complex social situations? I mean, this is France in 2012, where the far-right party won 20% of the vote. And this is France a few weeks ago, when people from an extreme group decided that they were going to kill some cartoonists. This is not simple stuff. Freedom of speech, the ideas of respect, the ideas of dignity and acceptance within a culture, these things make things worse. They make situations more difficult, more complex to handle. So, many of these things are tiny. Here's a great website called microaggressions.com. I recommend looking it up if you want to see some of the tiny things that bother people on an everyday basis. Very, very interesting resource, just to see what things you might never have seen happen to you, but happen to other people all the time. And learning to have respect for your own privilege to not have those microaggressions in your life, that's a really useful thing. Doesn't make them okay that they're tiny. Microaggressions, these everyday things that make the world toxic and especially affect people without the privilege, the power to control and make their lives better. Let's go on to victim blaming. So this is from the Microaggressions website. You shouldn't have gone alone was a response to me telling a close male friend of mine that I had a bad experience of sexual harassment with a doctor's appointment. Shouldn't have gone alone. That's a weird thing to say. So it was the victim's fault, was it? Shouldn't have gone alone. What were they wearing? That's the next question you always see turn up. Had they been drinking? That one turns up quite often. Well, they shouldn't have put themselves in that position, really, should they? They shouldn't have gone alone. Well, that's a very strange thing to say when someone's just told you they've had a problem with sexual harassment. So many subjects in this area do make me feel very sad. This is probably the saddest part of today's talk, so that's that. The idea that in case of assault, anyone's to blame other than the person doing attack, I think is a terrible thing. That just doesn't sit well with me. It really, really doesn't. So in a moment, I'm going to turn around and face the screen so I can't see the audience. If his topic is very, very personal to you, there will be a moment of looking at kind of sexual harassment stuff. If you're on the stream, please close your eyes. Look away, don't have your eyes open to the next slide. I'm not going to read it out loud, so you won't hear it. And I'll say when it's okay to open your eyes again. Okie dokie. So if you want to close your eyes, do that. Okay, so if you had your eyes closed, you could open up now. So, this topic could be very personal, obviously. I'm not going to go into detail about this one. I think hopefully we've covered the main parts of this. Suffice to say, it's completely unacceptable. And it happens all the time. These habits are drilled into us by some mainstream media. When you see coverage of sexual assault, these questions come up quite often as well. And also in gaming culture too. She should stop talking about women in games if she doesn't want to get abused online. Can't you just turn off your account? Maybe you should find a different industry to work in. I've seen all of these things said. That's not right. Why aren't we talking about the people doing the abuse rather than the people being abused? What did they do to deserve it? It's not their fault. Be aware. Try not to fall into this way of thinking. So, final bit. I was on a jury once for a woman accused of having sex with a 15-year-old boy. She'd lied about sexual conduct so he could impress his friends. She'd written this down so he could show his friends to impress them. Look, I've been having sex with that woman. But it was still a lie. And the judge summarized it in this way to the jury when we were supposed to make a decision. Your job is not to say whether the accused has been stupid, but whether a crime has been committed. She didn't deserve jail time for being stupid. She was pretty damn... Yeah, that wasn't a good idea, was it? We all make bad or controversial choices sometimes. We don't really deserve abuse and assault because of this. Conversations, education, discussion. Let's work through these things. Let's find better answers when things go wrong. We don't deserve abuse. The victims are not to blame. Tone policing. Some of this stuff today makes me bloody furious. Really does make me very angry. And I do get seriously upset by this. And it's possible I might say some stupid things sometimes. For all I know, I've said something stupid during this talk, and it's going to come back to haunt me at a later point. I hope I haven't. But, you know, you get passionate about stuff, which might make things worse. The stupid Nancy, ranty, feminazi SJW. If you don't know the acronym SJW, I'm pleased for you. It stands for Social Justice Warrior, and it's used as a way of trying to insult people who talk about these issues and try to hopefully make people understand each other better. Fucking crazy, a lot of them, lol, that kind of thing. Calm down, it's only a joke. Oh man, it comes back again and again. We get these little microaggressions. It's nothing big. Why are you getting so angry? This stuff happens all the time. So imagine a person who has no power, no control, has been pushed to the edge by microaggressions every day of their life. And then one day they decide to not passively fall into that pit and they kick back. And then they get told to calm down. It's only a joke. That's not good. Is that respectful? I absolutely do believe that discussion and education are the key to improving life for everybody. I really, really do. They create understanding and empathy. And I also think that angry rants could be more likely to increase opposition to equality and diversity issues rather than improve things. But I don't want to tell somebody to calm down when they've got every right to be furious. Some of the things that people have to go through, and then they get those sort of things said to them. They've got right to be furious about this stuff. So, tone policing is when one person doesn't respect another person's legitimate reason to be angry. I did say this was going to be the most complicated bit of today, because this doesn't justify unwarranted anger. You can't just be angry all the time. And I think this is really, really difficult. because we aren't living in that person's life and can't really know for sure what's warranted. They might have so many issues going on that basically being angry is the only thing they've got left to try and get them through that day. It's not comfortable to be around that, but if we can still describe it in terms of not being comfortable rather than I can't cope with this, then maybe we've got a bit more privilege than they have. But I think this is part of the reason that feminism had such a brand problem, was the end period of the second wave feminism, as it's called in history. Second wave feminism in the 1980s and 1990s. It was really, really angry. And this was with the intention of provoking a response. We'd had first wave feminism, there was activity in women's rights and equality movements coming on really well. But it was stalling, and it seemed to just be slipping backwards. And there was a lot of anger in the feminist movement. You know what? Some of that was kind of fair enough. It really was. People had the right to be angry about systematic oppression based only on the allocation of XX and XY chromosomes. What a strange thing to hate people for and to lack respect for them. But there was so much anger that listeners felt attacked. They felt attacked when they were trying to help. Even some initially sympathetic people became defensive and stopped listening. Then again, and this is something that I thought of a couple of months ago and really stepped out why I was having such a difficulty with this tone policing idea. I can't help but believe that the people that say, if you weren't shouting, I'd listen to you, and I've heard that said quite a few times on the internet, might not be telling the truth. I suspect many wouldn't listen to the calm words either, because not being listened to is often what made people so angry in the first place. And this whole idea that people don't pay attention to you when you're calm, and then people refuse to listen to you when you're angry. Maybe it's not your tone. Maybe people just don't want to hear what you're saying. And then they say, oh, I'd have listened to you if you weren't shouting. I go, well, you didn't. That's why people are shouting now. That's where shouting comes from. You don't walk into an office and go, I'm going to shout at everybody. It escalates. It gets there over time. So can you blame people for being angry? At least being angry got a response, and maybe the calm words didn't. Maybe people thought, oh, while they're quietly protesting and marching outside against the bankers, we'll just keep on making these decisions. And then people get very, very angry. Getting any response can feel better than being ignored. Like I say, this is a very, very difficult bit because it's so hard to stay calm or stay measured when people are being angry at you, but it really is worth remembering when conversations get heated. Does anyone know where this photo was taken? Yeah. So Ferguson, Missouri. This was taken in August. Now, I don't know about you, but I've only had a tiny bit of weapons training in my life, and the first thing I'm told is never point a gun at a person unless you intend to kill them, or you have a serious belief that you're going to have to kill them. Otherwise, you don't point your gun at them. Now, in this photo, I count 3 people pointing assault rifles at a person who, as far as I can tell at this point, is unarmed. I don't know. Some people are right to be angry. Asking them to be patient any longer might just be asking too much. So, that's tone policing for you. Keep listening, be patient, try to understand the anger and the reasons behind it. Maybe you'll understand their anger if you keep that patience going. Maybe you'll feel angry too, and then you won't want somebody telling you to calm down. So, that was those 4 topics. That's privilege, microaggressions, victim blaming, and tone policing. I usually describe myself as a diversity advocate, because saying modern feminist or third wave feminist generally makes people quite defensive for the reasons I talked about to do with second wave feminism and how that got people reacting. I am a feminist. I'm quite happy to be a feminist. I had somebody say to me the other day, I didn't know men could be feminists. Oh, yes, they can. I am a feminist on many other things too, and there's no contradiction there. I'm up for equal rights for marriage. That's not really necessarily a feminist issue. I'm up for encouraging people to look more carefully at racial diversity in their companies. That's not necessarily a feminist issue, but it is kind of a third wave feminist issue. These things do all tie together, and it is a general topic. So I am a feminist and many other things. Like I say, diversity advocate is the main term there. I'm not equalist. This is a term people say, oh, why do you have to say you're feminist? Why can't you say you're equalist? I'm not egalitarian in the way it's usually used on the internet, or humanist in that same way, although that's actually a religious term, but people tend to get that wrong and say that the wrong way on the internet as well. Those start with the principle that all people are equal. Now, that seems like an uncontroversial statement. Everybody's the same, aren't they? But the reality is people ideally would be equal, but aren't. And it's not just who they are, it's the culture they've been born into, the society around them that makes them unequal. That person by themselves on an island is equal to everybody else who's by themselves on that island, assuming they're not maybe got physical disabilities or mental health problems that make it really difficult to cope on an island. And even then, on an island outside of society, they might not be equal. So diversity is about recognizing this, recognizing that we are all different. Everyone has an equal right to respect and the support that they need to get on in life. And that's really what diversity is about. It's about equality of respect and equality of support and help. Some people will need more support than others because of that unequal privilege. We talked earlier today how these things affect you in different ways, and a privilege in one place could actually be a massive disadvantage somewhere else. So these things are complicated. And I think we're so used to having these kind of black and white Fox News kind of stories about this thing's bad and this thing's good. And we kind of go, well, maybe it's a lot more complicated than that. In Europe, there's a lot of progress towards equal rights. We're doing pretty well. But sometimes that's not enough if we want everybody to have equal opportunities. And I think this is a distinction which is worth making. So when I was studying for my PhD, for a while, I was living on money that put me below the poverty line in England. I couldn't get government support because I was studying. And I couldn't get study grants because they were only for people of colour, POC, gay people. None of them were bisexuals. That's interesting. Women, ex-convicts, rehabilitated drug users, single parents. And I found that quite frustrating. It's like, okay, I'm really stuck here. I don't have money. But I finished my PhD anyway. It took 7 years, but I did it. Now that's an interesting thing, isn't it? So maybe I didn't need the support as much as other people, because I could still do it. That upbringing I had, my family taught me well, clearly. I was stubborn, I was tenacious, I had the mental energy to carry on, even when I was eating beans on toast a hell of a lot. That's a very cheap meal. And super noodles. Everybody loves noodles. It's good training for being a game dev. So maybe I didn't need that support as much as other people. My challenges weren't the same as theirs. And maybe mine were easier to overcome without that additional support, because I did overcome them. Now, how many people might not have got through their PhD if I'd got the support that they should have had? It's the thing for me to think about quite often. So the opportunities were already unequal from the beginning. The grants were just trying to balance them out. Opportunity isn't about what you're given. It's sometimes about what you're starting with, what you've already got inside you, or what you've got around you. So it was right that I couldn't get them. It was right there was a bias in how those were distributed in society. Which feels a really weird thing to say. It's like, good, glad they didn't give me grants. It was actually the right thing. And at the time, that really annoyed me. But with perspective and a bit of age, I can look back and go, nope, they were right. They really were. It's not equal rights. That was equal opportunities. And that's a really good thing. And I think defining that difference is a very, very important thing to remember. Censorship is the other one that comes up whenever we talk about this. All this stuff today is not actually about censorship. Some people say it is, but it's really not. I've got no interest in taking sex out of the media. Sex between consenting adults is brilliant fun. It's great. I highly recommend it, and it should be part of our culture. I'm very into a sex-positive culture. I want people to be happy in their sex and their sexuality and doing things with people who are also happy about that situation. That's great. I'm not interested in forcing every television program to have one person of every ethnicity in it, where that would be unrealistic and it all looks like a United Colors of Benetton advert, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. That's not necessarily a bad idea, but it doesn't necessarily feel like the right solution either. It feels forced in a weird way. And that's strange. What I want is more diversity. I do have a big interest in putting diversity into media. People of colour, different ages, different bodies, different minds, sexes and sexualities, all agendas, religions, and many other things. I think we should have these in the media where it fits, where this is naturally happening in society, which is everywhere. Because this stuff is everywhere around us. It's all there. It's in the people in this room, it's in the people walking down the street outside, and it's the people watching the stream and watching this later online, hopefully. This is everybody. Women in bikinis, sure, yes, those do exist. Those exist in the world. I've seen them. And those can be in your game if appropriate. Then why the hell not? But also female identifying chief executive officers, people of colour lead actors, street children in Rio, travel agents, marketing executives, rice farmers. How many people have played a game about a rice farmer? I did, when I was about 7. On a BBC Micro in my school. Nobody else knew what to do with it, and we had a game called Yellow River. It's great. But this is the thing, I've not seen a single game on that subject in nearly 30 years. That's very strange. I've seen a lot of things about space marines and horror games and monsters and aliens, and I'm really enjoying Destiny at the moment. Are you playing Destiny? It's great, isn't it? I really am enjoying that game a hell of a lot, but that doesn't mean I don't want other things. I've been loving playing through The Room, and I've been loving playing through Monument Valley on my phone. It's a fantastic game. Play it. These are really nice things. Just different lives and empathy for them. We can do this. We can tell any kind of story with our media, and that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. We find new ideas and innovation in these places because we always need new ideas in the games industry. So 2012 to 2013, I think, were the years of hunting wild animals. Did a bit of that in Last of Us as well. 2014, I'd probably say, was the year of really big jumps. You know, we do kind of go through these things, and are new mechanics enough to keep our industry inspired? Oh, now you can shoot defenseless bunnies, and now you can jump really high while shooting defenseless bunnies, and is that enough to keep our industry inspired and our audiences inspired? Players have now done jumping. We're going to be jumping, there's triple jumps and quadruple jumps and coming in the next game. That's going to be on the back of the box. Now with quadruple jumps in Destiny. I think we might need something more. Are the stories of diverse people going to challenge us to find new experiences to give to our players? And how do we do this without insulting the people whose stories we are telling? Because I look around this room and let's just say there's a commonality in skin color. And that's pretty much the situation I've been to at every single games development conference. And how do we make sure that we are looking at these people and their lives, people of color who exist and have problems facing them, and how do we reflect their lives if we aren't always them? We talk to people. We have respect for them. We talk to them. We find out how they're going. Hopefully we work alongside them. So that's a good thing that education needs to fix. We're working on it. And I'm actively working on this stuff. I'm working on a game about grief and hope, which also happens to have a gay relationship in it. And it's got women in it, and it's got young people in it, and it's got old people in it. It's not about gay relationships any more than it's about just people's lives. And these lives of all of these characters. And the gay thing seems to get a lot of attention. But it's about people. It's about regular people and everyday love. You know, wonderful, extraordinary, amazing, breathtaking, everyday love, which is really cool. Finding a way to tell this story has been a really brilliant design challenge. I absolutely loved it. But I mean, is this a game where we've taken out difficulty, we've taken out challenge, we've taken out timers? You just go through, you do the story, and you come out the other end, and maybe cry a bit and feel better and happy and sad and stuff along the way. Is that a game? Is it some sort of playable, interactive, narrative experience? I like that phrase because it does a nice acronym of PINE. Is it something like that? I don't know. Does it really matter if it's a game or not? If it's enjoyable? If people who play this, if people who download this think it's good? That's the most important thing. People enjoyed the prototype. We made lots of people cry and then sort of happy at the end. And we hope they'll enjoy the final game as much as that. So does it really matter if it's a game? Is that a big question there? I just don't know, to be honest. We're just going to make something the best we can, tell the best story we can. It's interactive, it's beautiful. Have a look at the trailer on our website. And we're not alone in making this. So there's our one fragment of him. You've got games like Dear Esther, which had pretty much nothing in it other than walking around an island and a story that unraveled as you went. And Valve played the prototype and went, that's really awesome. And then helped them make it into something as beautiful as you see on the screen behind me. There's Gone Home, telling a story about the life of a woman who's come home and is trying to unravel the what's happened to her family and why the house is empty. Got Autumn, announced a couple of weeks ago publicly. It's a game about the aftermath of sexual assault and what this does to a person and how to live through these experiences and how it can feel to be in those places. And I know some of the people working on this are working to research so damn hard to make this as respectful as possible. So using these ideas that we're talking about today to try and make this as great as they can. Got Contrast, lovely 3D and /2D platformer about family and stress and society and crime and what these things do to you. It's wonderful, lovely little game to play. Got The Novelist, where you play a spirit going around a family's house trying to work out what's going on there. Really interesting, creative stuff I've never seen anywhere else. And of course, that Dragon Cancer, an amazing looking title, which is about a man whose child is dying from cancer. These aren't things I've played much before. These are new feeling things. So these people are finding inspiration and diversity here. It's not about censorship or having less games. We're always going to have Call of Duty, and Destiny's got that 10-year plan, and I'm really looking forward to that. I really am. A diversity in games is about having more and other games that show other ways of treating people, with all kinds of different lives and different gameplay verbs, different things that we can do. New ideas mean new gameplay mechanics, new audiences, new business models, and great innovative games. And isn't that really what we all want to make? Maybe it isn't. A hell of a lot of us do. And hopefully I think you can find inspiration in doing this as well. We can make this world a better kind of place and make a great living at the same time by finding new people who want to play, talking to them in ways they've never been talked to before by computer games. And that's exciting. That really is an exciting thing to do. So by learning to communicate respectfully with others, we gain empathy for their lives, and we become smarter and more inspired in our designs. I think that's an amazing thing to do. So let's embrace that diversity and explore the lives with respect. Let's just make even more great games together. Thank you very much for listening. So I think we've got a few minutes for questions, if you'd like to ask some, before we need to wrap up the conference for the day. Would anybody like to ask any questions? Yes, one back there. I'm going to drink some water.
Thanks. So I really liked your talk about equality and equal opportunities. And I wanted to ask a more general question, not regarding games, but how to create equal opportunities. Because I think in Austria, for example, there is a huge problem with sexism, so that women have less opportunities than men. But the question is, how do you create equal opportunities without creating the feeling that you, I don't know, that you create, that you destroy equality, like talks only for women. Some men would say, oh, that's not equality. Why should we do that? So how do you solve this problem?
Sure. So some of that's what I was talking about when I gave the example about my PhD, that there were funds available for one group that wasn't available for me. And it does seem weird. For example, we'd go to America and we'll say there's a fund for African American people to go to school or to go to university. And people might be saying, well, I'm from a European descent and I need funding to go to university. And they go, this is unfair. The trouble is that the system and the situation is already unfair. It's already incredibly imbalanced. So really what it's trying to do, while it's not giving money to both sides, it is giving money to one side and just trying to balance out all the systems on the other side. And the trouble is, when we try to do big group things, often someone is a victim on this, or someone doesn't get the same opportunity as everybody else. It is a really tricky thing to get right. Like I say, when it was happening with me in my PhD, I was really frustrated by that, and it's taken a lot more thinking about these kind of things before I realized that actually it was kind of right those opportunities weren't available to me. So when there is a women in games group but there's not a men in games group, you kind of go, why is that? It's because most groups are for games are 90% men already.
I totally agree with you, but I see a huge problem when the women say that it's unfair. I, as a male white man from Europe, I see that my privilege and the ideological thinking of the world of me is like really high. So I can take disadvantages. But if you try to support another group and they think that it's unfair that they get this support, or like maybe they want to get to it like you did all by themselves. So how do you respond to that? I'm sorry, I'm really sorry that I got away from games.
No, it's a very broad conversation. In some respects, it's about understanding that the anger they might have is probably very justified, and they do feel that they haven't been listened to. The thing is, it might not be you that did it. Remember the thing I was talking about, microaggressions? That all through the day, someone's been going, hey, 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 and the last person was the person who got the ton of bricks dumped on them. They were the one who got shouted at. Sometimes you're going to be that person. And to you, it's going to feel unfair. It's like, why are they so angry at me? Because I'm supporting this group over here. And maybe you're actually a really good person who wants to support all the groups that can only afford the time or the money to support one. But there might be other people who have deliberately chosen to only support that one because they don't like the others or they really don't support the others. It's going to feel unfair to you when you get blamed for being like other people. But please keep an open mind that this might not be the first time that kind of stuff's happened, and they've had so much stuff happen to them in the past, so much unfair treatment, that that little one thing from you might have been enough to kick them off. Again, then we get to kind of tone policing, where a person's just had so much stuff that maybe the things they say, well, I don't know the conversations you've had, maybe they're very sensible conversations, but it's possible things they might say things that aren't actually correct or don't respect you. Please, as you said yourself, you've had a lot of privilege in your life. You've got a good intellect, and you're very eloquent. You're talking a language probably isn't your first language, so you're doing better than I am. So please try and use that position to just take a step back and go, why have they become so angry here? And just think about that. Try and understand from their perspective, because I think one thing that really helped me in my life was realizing that every single person, every second of their life, thinks they're justified in what they're doing and saying. There is never a moment where a person goes, I'm going to be absolutely wrong. This would be really stupid to go and hit this person. They think it's a legitimate, sensible reaction to their circumstances to go and punch that other person. Now, they might be saying that because as a child they had a very difficult upbringing. Then their job was really difficult that week, and life has been so damn unfair. It's only right if they make life unfair for somebody else. In their head, it's always justified. Some of those justifications will be very good, some of them won't. But when you get in that situation where somebody seems to be being really unfair to you, and you know you're not in the wrong for a start, think very carefully about whether you are in the wrong or not. And I obviously don't know your situation, so I can't say. Think very carefully about those situations. Think about those encounters. Maybe the other person is feeling they're in the right for a reason too. So try and understand why they think they're right. And it might be a very, very long conversation to get there. And maybe that other person has been pushed so far by so many other people saying, explain yourself. They don't have the energy to do it anymore. This is what we call seed lioning, where it's just like a person pops up going, hello, could you explain this? And they go, I don't have the time. Can you explain this? I don't have the time. I'm being very polite and asking you to explain it. Look, stop it. You're the 10th person to tweet at me in the last 3 minutes asking to explain. I don't have the time to go through this step by step with every person. And that's when we have a position of privilege, and like I say, I'm fortunate enough to have had quite a lot of those, you have to really stop and kind of go, am I helping here? If they've got to the point where they're so angry about this, maybe there's worse things going on in their life than mine, and I should be the calm person here and try and step back and go, I'm sorry if I offended you. I don't quite understand it yet. And if you want to talk about this and explain it further, I'll be happy to listen. But I don't expect you to be that person right now, or even ever. It's difficult. And I know that was a very long answer to a fairly short question, but I could probably talk about that same topic for about another 7 hours, and I don't. I think everybody wants to go home and have food at some point tonight.
Thanks a lot for still taking the time to answer.
I hope it was of some help anyway. Are there any other questions? Sure.
I was wondering, being that you're in this also privileged position to be able to pass on the diversity of your knowledge and your practices as a designer, as an individual, as a teacher, how do you bring in this discussion with your students or with the people that you guide, and what have they come back to you with?
Okay. Good question. So as said on the screen, I work at NHTV University in the Netherlands. I work on a program called IGAD as part of the Academy of Digital Entertainment. We have a course that we go through in the first year, which is called Society and New Media. We start off looking at some of the biggest topics, and then we work through every week various of the big issues that affect games development and games culture. We start off actually with a question which seems really, really stupid, but and probably will make you groan when I say it, but it's actually a really good starting point for thinking about these things. The question we start off with is, are video games art? That one again, a few people have wrote, oh god. I wish the camera could show that. But it's one of those questions that, and of course all games developers go, yes, of course video games are art. Whether they're good art or not is another question, but they are definitely art. There's no question about this. It's an entertainment medium, and it can be used for artistic processes. One of the great things about everyone agreeing this, and pretty much this is unanimous among games development, is why does that matter? Why does it matter if it's art? Because if it's art, then the same way you have film critics, you could have game critics. You can have cultural studies. You have topics like racism. You have topics like Islamophobia. You have topics like sexism and violence. Do video games make you violent? All of the studies that have studied the studies, there was a great one, a study that studied 30 studies in Sweden, has shown the evidence is inconclusive. That does not mean they could never be proven to cause violence, only that we have not done it. It might be that we will never prove it, and it might be that it's not true. But just because you can't prove it doesn't mean it's not true. They have shown that games can alter the behavior of children when they're choosing toys. So if they played a violent video game, they're more likely to pick a gun up afterwards. So there is a tiny bit of proof there to show that even in the short term, it can affect your behavior or your choices, but it might just be they saw something on screen and liked it, so they picked it up again. You can't really prove that. But the great thing about this is launching into this kind of thing of like video games are art. They're not just like a bottle can be art as well, but they're not just like a bottle. They're a thing which is worthy of study, and they're a thing that is a cultural medium, and all cultural mediums have embedded dialogues and discourses in it. If you look at the King James Bible, that was a Bible written in the most powerful, eloquent language of the time, and it's still a beautiful piece of English literature. It's an incredibly persuasive piece of writing. You look at the editing of the Bible by Emperor Constantine, which took out many, many books of the Bible. You kind of go, well, there were messages embedded in this book from that time onwards. And there are so many different translations of the Bible, each one of them having a slightly different message. You kind of go, well, if this is the word of God, which one is the right word of God? And of course, there are different beliefs in that. And if you choose to believe different things from other people, that's cool. Be respectful to each other, please. That's fine. But this is it. You enter into this dialogue that if games are like literature, games are like Frankenstein, superb book, set the tone for the next 200 years. Frankenstein is still one of the most relevant books ever written. Mary Shelley did an amazing thing there and terrified all the men around her, which is I find personally hilarious. But she's an amazing person. Look her up and find out her life story. She's a really interesting character. But she wrote a book which is speaking to us hundreds of years later in so many ways that she probably never thought of, the people of the time never thought of, but she touched such a zeitgeist, such a ghost of the time, such a thing that embodied what was important about culture, that she created this timeless masterpiece. But we can look at that in all kinds of different ways, and there are all kinds of readings of that, just as there can be all kinds of readings of Call of Duty. Now, when you put Frankenstein next to Call of Duty, you'll go, well, one of them's a classic work of literature, and another one's a mass-produced sort of selling game. It's very good. The interface design is excellent. Feedback systems are very good. Multiplayer, very, very nicely balanced. It's an amazing piece of craft. But when you say this is an amazing piece of art, you start going, okay, so what is the discourse that's being entered into here? What are the words that are coming out here? And how does this enter into a social discussion and a social discourse? What does this game add to society, and what does this game take away from society? What is being supported here? What are the messages in this? Just as we can analyze television, we can analyze books and comics and music and all these other brilliant dance sort of forms of expression and entertainment media that we have, we can analyze games as well. And from that starting point, that's how we move through the curriculum and just help people think about these things. And the students do come back with amazing changes in their games design. They go back to their teams and go, hey, you know that thing we're doing? Let's not. That's a thing that happens all the time, and that's not a good thing that's happening all the time. I think Monument Valley was a classic example of this, where they had a game which was about going and stealing something, and then they went, actually, no, it's about going and giving something. And just that twist in the development took a game which was a fairly standard feeling game to something which is beautiful. It's stunning. It's not just visually stunning, it's emotionally stunning as well. And that game's going to stick with me for a very, very long time. And that's the kind of change that people get in their ideas and their thinking when they think about these topics more deeply. So that's what's happening with some of our students. Of course, we all still love making things explode as well. This isn't just what we do. Obviously, we do robots and ninjas and pirates and zombies. But we do a lot of creative stuff. And it's about helping people find mediums and stories which are passionate for them and hopefully make the world a better place whilst having a good business model behind it. Because other people want to play these things. It's a bit of everything, but we can make everybody happy, I think, with respect. I think we probably need to round up, don't we? One last question? Is anybody any last questions? Excellent. Thank you very much for listening, everybody. It was a pleasure.